I hope that the manufacturing industrial clients are not becoming numb to all of the incidents and saying, you know what, we're just going to sit back and let the cards fall where they fall because there's a new one out every single day and there's nothing we can do about it.
Welcome to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. In each episode, we dive into the world of industrial cybersecurity. Join us as we cover the latest trends, innovations, and practical insights as we talk with leaders and practitioners across the industry. Gear up and let's get into this week's episode.
Hi, I'm Craig Duckworth.
I'm Dino Buslaki.
And today, Dino, I want to talk about the billion-dollar acquisition, cash out, exit, whatever you want to call it, of Nozomi to Mitsubishi. How's that sound?
Crazy, what I think. But
yeah, it is that. But I think it'd be a good conversation. I think there's a lot of people in the industry that are trying to figure out what it means, how it applies to them, how it applies to the industry as a whole, what it does to other competitors or competition in the marketplace. Clarity, Armis, Dragos.
Now, and we've seen these acquisitions of these cybersecurity platforms. It's not new, right? We saw Microsoft get CyberX. Of course, Tenable's a security company that picked up Indigene.
Yep.
Did Honeywell get one? Did Schneider get one? I know Siemens hasn't done anything yet as far as going after a particular firm, or Rockwell partnered with Clarity early on.
Yeah.
But I think it's just more of these very large automation technology companies wanting to get cybersecurity built into their industrial control system platforms. Back to that cyber-informed engineering play. How do we get better at implementing cybersecurity, which I'm a big fan of as part of the OT environment, because that's kind of been the missing piece, right? We talk about the IT-OT convergence a lot, and the challenges for IT to really be able to make deep inroads into the industrial arena with implementing technologies that they've chosen for the organization without really working with the industrial side of their business. And I think this is just another avenue demonstrating that the OT ecosystem, as I always state, has to get better at this. They have to start driving the cybersecurity initiative because IT just can't get all the way there by themselves.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. And I think this demonstrates maybe this is the first exit of the other ones. There's been speculation on, is this going to make it more difficult for the others in the marketplace because it sets such a high bar? This set a $1 billion bar. Yeah. You're looking at what's the run rate, what's the return on investment, what's the numbers look like based off of the amount of capital they've taken over their series rounds, and it sets a high number.
All right. Well, think of what the design group did, right? As far as acquiring Velta Technology, right? And adding an OT cybersecurity practice into their control system piece of the business, right? Yep. It's just a continuation of that roadmap that I think is really what's going to be the game changer for, improving the cybersecurity postures within these manufacturing environments.
Yeah, no,
we
you're right.
had a conversation with our federal government friends talking about cybersecurity, right? And some of the things that they're witnessing and seeing around the globe, and the attacks that are unfolding and have unfolded, and trying to drive how can they be a better partner for the American-based companies, but even though it's more of a global thing, in improving cybersecurity in this industrial world.
And part of a little sidebar, the one thing that I took out of that yesterday, which was the most important thing, is this is happening now. This is not a matter of if, this is a matter of when. This is a global event. We've talked about the geopolitical pieces in the past. You look at the tensions rising between Ukraine, Russia, between us and China, between everything. Nothing's changed. And unfortunately, I hope that the manufacturing industrial clients are not becoming numb to all of the incidents and saying, you know what, we're just going to sit back and let the cards fall where they fall because there's a new one out every single day and there's nothing we can do about it. I hope that's not the case.
Yeah, well, and a lot of clients, as we both know, are starting to not so much dabble, but are actually starting to take a really hard look at these cybersecurity technologies for the plant floor. I think what the struggle for them is expertise and resources. When they look at the cost of hiring an organization such as ours, think of managed services in the IT world, taking that same practice of managed services and applying that to the industrial sector. And it's not an uncommon theme to manufacturers because I would say 80–90% of manufacturers hire engineering companies anyway to help them with their control system work that they're doing, right? Whether it's lifecycle replacement, whether it's improving with efficiencies, whether it's brownfield, greenfield expansion activities going on. Nobody can go and do it by themselves. They have to rely on, specialized organizations to do this. The same is true for cybersecurity. And for those organizations that think, well, if I hire managed services, I'm going to pay, let's just say $300,000 a year because I got 6 plants or 10 plants. I can go hire 3 people. Well, yeah, you can go hire 3 people, but are you going to get to keep them? Can you find them? And can they hit the ground running when you do get them, right? And the answer to that is no, 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 and no. So you're going to have to start relying on organizations to really assist you with not just standing these tools up. That's not really the hard part. The hard part is actually being able to fine tune that technology and fit it into your plant. The whole localization, as we call it, operationalizing that system to extract the value and benefit that you're really looking for from the investment made in these cybersecurity technologies.
Well, yeah, totally agreed. And part of the speculation is, did Mitsubishi acquire Nozomi for their managed services platform to try and bring this to their clients? And I don't know that answer. I think that on the surface, it has been said that they intend to keep this as a separate operating unit and continue to allow them to operate autonomously, and will just provide financial backing and security as they continue to grow and advance the technology. Again, I think we heard that same story from Microsoft when they bought CyberX, didn't we?
Well, and Nozomi has a lot of clients out there,
Absolutely.
right, that have their technology, and some of them aren't any relationship at all to Mitsubishi, right? They might be purely a Rockwell / Siemens client. And the one thing that I found interesting, and I think it was released, but the whole idea where Mitsubishi was embedding Nozomi technology into their controllers, right?
Yeah.
Which is something we've talked about in the past. It's like, at what point will these automation technology vendors actually build modules that go into their control systems that provide this intrusion detection and intrusion prevention capability, right, within the control system itself, which I think is a great model. Is that going to be Mitsubishi and Nozomi's focus? We've seen that. You take Clarity, for example, when they acquired Medigate and they rebranded it as Xstone. And then they kind of lost their focus on their on-prem solution because they were spending all their time and energy and resources focusing on their new cloud-based solution, which became Xstone. And so some of their on-prem solutions suffered a little bit from that because they weren't getting the same level of resources applied for that technology, right? Especially in the stage that we're at today, which is still, growing and maturing within these platforms.
No, totally agreed. And, I look at it, first off, congratulations to the entire Nozomi team. That's a huge, huge, huge effort. They've put 12 long, hard years into this, and to be able to exit, period, because if you look at the number of businesses that start up that don't make it past 8–10 years, that don't go anywhere, that's a huge accomplishment. So to their team, hats off, kudos all the way around. But as I look at this from an OEM standpoint or an industrial automation standpoint, I'm going to put myself in someone else's shoes. Let's say I'm Rockwell now, and I'm trying to integrate Nozomi into Rockwell because I want to penetrate the North American market, and I know I need that technology to be successful, unlike the rest of the world where maybe Siemens or Yokogawa or someone else is more prevalent based on geographical region. Is Rockwell going to say, well, I don't know, because now you're owned by Mitsubishi, which is a competitor of them. Do you think that'll have any bearing or any play at all into this acquisition? Or How would you look at it if you were kind of on that side of the fence?
I'm looking at to see which one of these firms now become go IPO, right? Which I think is in order to keep the acquisitions that we're seeing from happening. I know a couple of them want to get to that IPO status, right? And become a publicly traded company. And this may help fuel some of that, to drive it to even though it was $1 billion investment, the acquisition of Nozomi, is that right? It was $1 billion for them to acquire it,
Yep.
and their market cap compared to some of the others was smaller. And so at some point here, we're going to see one of these cybersecurity companies become, I think, a publicly traded company.
Well, I think and that's one way to look at it. But if you look at the financial aspects of what they exited for, which is almost $1 billion, and you look at the amount of capital in the series rounds that they've taken a lot less than Dragos or Clarity or Armis. So it's going to push that valuation for the others up higher and set that bar a lot higher from a return standpoint. And I think that either VCs or the market or the IPO arena is going to look for better financial returns versus where they stand today. And while I don't disagree that you'll see some of these go IPO, it may push it to 26 or 27 until that happens.
Yeah, but the IT companies, take Microsoft and Tenable, with the Energy and CyberX acquisitions a few years ago, they haven't dominated the OT cybersecurity arena,
Right.
compared to this particular acquisition is purely into that OT environment, right? I mean, this is all around the industrial control system space. We operate in that realm, right? And I think that's primarily, you take Clarity. Armis is definitely in the OT space, but they also play in that IT/IoT space, healthcare space. Clarity, on the other hand, Dragos, on the other hand, those guys are really control system, cybersecurity, software companies, right?
Yep.
And I think they need to stay pure to that OT world versus blending with IT. I don't think that we're going to see the merging of these with a CrowdStrike acquire Clarity, for example,
Yeah.
or Palo Alto, or Fortinet, or one of those types of organizations, where they really want to get their hands on that IP that those organizations have, the way that they're able to, the algorithms, the machine learning, the way those platforms operate within these industrial environments. So, the good news is there's a lot going on. At the same time, it still looks a little messy.
Oh, it's absolutely a little messy. It's definitely a little messy.
I don't know really what else we could add about the Mitsubishi Nozomi acquisition per se, except it's hot off the press. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, straight off. And it's, again, I think it's for groups like Design Group, systems integrators that are technology agnostic, as long as they continue down the path they are and they continue to allow others to sell and implement and operationalize and localize their technology and drive that market, I think it's a good thing. I don't see any downside at all at this point. Again, you got a very talented group of individuals, from the co-founders to the CEO to the channel and the sales and the developers, that have spent a lot of time putting effort into it. It's a great product that, finally reap some benefits. I'd like to see them all stay. Hopefully they do. Sometimes money changes that stuff. And, as long as they can continue to keep some core staff, then they'll be fine, I think.
Yeah, I don't know who's moving the chess pieces around, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, same here. Hopefully it gives them an opportunity to continue with part of their AI initiatives, because that was a big piece that they were running, is how do they integrate AI for some of those decision-making processes from an automation standpoint, just to try and help part of that decision-making process.
It's like the cloud versus on-prem. The manufacturers, when you're dealing with the OT teams, when it comes to their plants, like things to be on-prem. Because they
Yeah,
want to be able to think that nothing outside the plant is going to prevent them from running. So they like to be able to be in control, right? It makes
yep,
sense.
true.
Control. Because they are control freaks. Manufacturers are.
They
And
are.
if when things are up in the cloud, to them, that's beyond their control, right? It's one
Mhm.
thing to send data up there to for algorithms, for forecasting, for forensics, for data analysis, whatever. But when it comes to the day-to-day stuff, they like for that stuff to be on-prem. And manufacturers are still, play the card of air gap. We see less and less of that in every single manufacturing facility we go into. There's always physical connectivity. Question is, how do you logically separate it, and how are you managing that? And even for those organizations that believe that they've, put something in place to say, look, I put in micro-segmentation, I put in some intrusion prevention things, to really harden my cybersecurity posture. That's great. And those are great steps. But how do you make sure it stays that way? The trust but verify, right? Because things change over time. People make mistakes. People push out patches. People change configurations. New equipment comes into the environment. And so when those things happen, do you have a good mechanism for tracking that? How do you do that today if somebody goes out there and puts a new asset in your plant,
Mhm.
puts a new machine in, and what is that machine's role? What is it communicating with? What is it trying to communicate with? Who's supporting it? How are they supporting it? How are they remoting into it? All of those things need to be taken into consideration. And then you have to be able to track that.
But organizations still are, let's call it struggling, for lack of a better term, to to play catch up. And we had this morning, we were on a call this morning where, again, the statistic was out there that only 13% of organizations are in what we would call that walk run stage of whatever technology they have. The other 87% were still in the unaware or I don't know or I don't care phase, almost head in the sand type environment. So, but that's the same stat that we've seen from Gartner and Forrester and everybody else for the last 5 years. And I don't know why organizations aren't taking this more serious, especially after yesterday with
It's
the
it's
conversation that we had with the federal team.
but it's the resources. They don't have individuals within their environment who know how to deal with this stuff at the end of the day. They've got an IT team and they're really good and probably stretched very thin, just managing and taking care of the enterprise environment that they're responsible for. Versus how do I become more entrenched in what's going on inside my manufacturing environment so I can make a positive impact,
Mhm.
and it's hard. If you're not
Yeah.
working in that space every day, all day, and really understand that environment, you're not gonna have much influence, and you're not gonna be able to make that positive impact. If you're trying to do it from states away or from arm's length, whatever you want to call it, and trying to implement some cybersecurity strategy because you're not bringing the OT people along with you, which is really required in order to make this successful.
Yeah.
And so if you're constrained on resources, budget, expertise, you're going to struggle like this, right? I talked to an organization a week or so ago. They never even heard of some of these OT cybersecurity companies,
And
right?
that blows my mind.
They're a manufacturer, right? So back to your 87% number, there's still a lot of that out there, but it's just because it hasn't come across their desk. They haven't had time to look at it, or they just don't have the right people to be able to help them with that, right? And that's where you got to start looking at your partner, OT partner ecosystem to find out what the capabilities are of these
Yep.
system integrators and OEMs that you're working with, right? Back to the comments that we've made on a handful of these podcasts is those CISOs and CIOs are going to really have to make a positive move towards becoming a little bit more engaged with who our partners are on that side of the fence. I would like to know who they are. I'd like to know what their capabilities are, what are their partner relationships,
Yeah.
what kind of practices do they have? They do that with their IT partners. You
Yep.
need to do the same thing with your OT partners.
Yeah. There's no reason to do this alone. And I know that we've said this like 100 times. Find out who your local systems integrators are that are doing the bulk of your work. Sit down and have quarterly business reviews with them the same way you do Microsoft or Cisco or your cloud provider or your endpoint protection. And IT does that and it happens. On OT, it may be happening, but it's happening in a vacuum with the plant team only, and IT is not part of that. But if when a CISO or CIO is being tasked with securing the manufacturing side, they have to expand their purview. They have to include everything in that plant that rolls up to them, or you're right, it doesn't work. They've got to find new friends.
You got to make some new friends, in order to be successful at this. There's no doubt about it. And we've seen that work, right?
Yeah.
We have seen, regardless of how we got engaged, it's always really good because it's a win for both sides,
Absolutely.
and that's what IT's looking for, is they're looking for a win. And more ideally, they want somebody that's a true partner, that's already a partner with the plant.
Yeah.
The plant already trusts. The plant's already been doing work with them for years, decades, spent millions and millions of dollars, doing machine control integration activities of all stripes and sorts. Leverage those people, and really find out what their capabilities are, because I promise you, you're going to start seeing more of this OT ecosystem coming to the table, i.e. Mitsubishi buying Nozomi.
Yep.
Now, when you start looking at Mitsubishi machine centers, you're looking at a DCS or whatever, it's probably going to come with Nozomi in it.
Absolutely.
It may not be called Nozomi, whatever they might rebrand it to, but it's going to have OT cybersecurity technologies built into those machine centers.
Yeah, well, absolutely it is. I think that's the long game. How do you take this technology, and I, as an automation vendor, Nozomi, Rockwell, pick a stripe, makes no difference, Siemens, how do I take this and give myself a competitive advantage? And I say every PLC I have, just like OnStar, we've talked about this. Most cars come with OnStar, and it's even free for the first 30 or 60 days. And then you choose to pay for that going forward. Enable this out of the box technology from a security standpoint, and no CISO, no security professional on the planet is going to say, you know what? I don't need that security stuff. Go ahead and turn it off. I'm
Now,
good.
here's what's going to happen, though, is that let's say you're a big Mitsubishi shop, and Nozomi's coming in that machine center, and you've bought, let's say, one of the other vendors' stuff. Maybe you're using something that's IT related. Maybe you're using a Forescout or a Tenable-like tool, for example. The OT team's not going to allow you to void the warranty
Nope.
by saying, oh, we're going to put in Tenable into that DCS, that Mitsubishi DCS. Get that Nozomi stuff out of there. That's not going to happen,
Nope.
right? So now you're going to end up with another platform
Mhm.
that's going to be embedded into that. And you're back to that OT-IT split, right?
Yep.
So that's the reality of a scenario like that. And so IT will take their toys and go home, and the problem's going to become the OT's responsibility of cybersecurity for those Mitsubishi systems that have Nozomi integrated and built into that control system, right? And it's almost that mindset where OT needs to start playing that type of game
Mhm.
and saying, look, I know there's tools out there that can help me be successful, help me improve my cybersecurity posture, help me with process integrity. IT, I really appreciate your help, but you're not getting me where I need to go. I'm going to have to go my own path,
Yeah.
And some organizations have the capability of doing that.
They do.
Some don't. Maybe IT has more weight within the organization and kind of thwart that. But then what happens then is you're weakening your position from a cybersecurity perspective, because IT is never going to get the depth of where they need to go to be successful in there. They're going to go as far as they can, usually to that IDF switch within the plant somewhere,
Mhm.
and they're done.
Yep.
Because everything on the control system layer that belongs to the asset owner at the end of the day is going to be the one responsible for safety and security for those control systems. Right?
Yep. No,
And so
100%.
you can start working with their partners and working together across that spectrum, or you both are going to just go build your own little fiefdoms and go about your way.
Well, that goes back to OT needs to start owning this stuff. And, IT needs to help them along. But at the end of the day, if they
Get
can't,
out of the way.
Yep.
Just get out
Yeah.
of the way.
Yep.
Because once these automation technology vendors start bringing this stuff in, you're able to get it out.
It's
Just
game over. Yeah.
like those layer 2 unmanaged switches that they put in, or that version of Windows they're running on those HMIs. It is what it is, and that's what they got. And the client's using that to make $1 million a day's worth of goods, and they're not going to let anything upset that apple cart.
The life cycle replacement is way too long in OT. It's usually measured in decades.
CapEx spent, right?
Yeah, so it's a completely different beast. We've said it over and over. IT and OT are different. The entire ecosystem is different. I can't say it any more differently. It's different.
And when we get involved doing what we do for clients that even been using these tools for a number of years and only found out you're not using it entirely to its fullest extent capabilities. It's either been architected wrong, it's configured wrong, you're missing 60% or more of the assets in your plant, that you're not even having visibility into. And so what was the benefit of spending millions of dollars of doing this only to be half pregnant?
Great conversation, Dino. I think that we've kind of covered all this. I appreciate it. For anybody out there listening, if you got questions, you need any help, organizations like ours, we can lend a hand. We're in the plants all day long. Let us know. We're here to help. Continue to listen and follow us and improve every single day. That's all we can ask, is that you've taken the right steps to get better, period over period.
Thanks for tuning in to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. To stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to click the follow or subscribe button now. And if you found this podcast helpful or have a topic you'd like us to discuss, please leave us a review or let us know. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.